and a solid publication record in leading conference and general with his experience in research grant writing. He has so his research focus are in the area of energy efficiency, licensed assisted access, cell selection, performance optimization, and long range wide area networking. He has published more than 17 reputed research journal papers, and uh, um, he has got outstanding teaching assistant award for computational engineering in 2011 from IIT Madras, and outstanding teaching assistance award for wireless communication and networking in 2013. He is also the member of technical program committee and member of several organizing committee of uh, IFIP working group. So with these words, today he will deliver the talk on IoT. He will deliver the talk on state of art IoT architectures, communication technologies and applications. So with these words, I would like to invite Professor Rahul Thakur to start his session. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Pawan, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I hope my screen is visible to you all.
Yes, sir, it is visual. I think, sir, your microphone is mute. Please unmute, sir. Rahul Thakur, sir. Professor, yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Your mic was mute, sir. Now it's okay.
Okay. So yeah. So today I'm going to talk about state-of-the-art IoT architectures, communication technologies, and applications. Okay. But before that, I'm going to give a very brief introduction about IoT. Very brief, because I think that is already covered in yesterday's session. Okay. Okay, before I start, Dr. Pawan already introduced me, okay, but I'm going to just give a brief biography of myself again, okay. So I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, IIT Roorkee from last 2 years. Before that, I worked at BITS Pilani Goa campus for 1.5 years. And before that, I did my joint MS plus PhD from IIT Madras. I worked in the area of Internet of Things, cellular and wireless network, vehicular networks, artificial intelligence, and frankly saying anything that that can be connected or that can be automated. So I feel interested in almost everything related to that domain. Okay, these are my contact information, my email address and webpage in case you guys want to get in touch with me related to some research problems or something. Okay. So this is the brief outline of the talk. Okay. First, I'm going to give a very brief introduction of IoT and its applications. Then I'm going to talk about some unique state-of-the-art applications that includes Internet of Underwater Things, Internet of Drones, and IoT for cyber-physical systems. Then I'm going to talk about some unique communication technologies that are being used, that are being developed for IoT, mainly narrowband Internet of Things or NB-IoT and LoRaWAN architecture. LoRaWAN protocol. And finally, I'm going to talk about some unique architectures that are being developed because of the integration of social networking into IoT, because of the integration of edge computing into IoT. So there are some unique architectures that are being looked into. So I'm going to give a brief into that also. And finally, if time permits, I want to shed some light on the researcher's perspective on IoT technology and education. Because as I know that most of you are faculty members, and there's some missing components that I usually see when I look at the education, the technological invention that is happening in terms of IoT. And what I want you guys to brief outline that how things should proceed, what actually consists of IoT. When I say that you are teaching someone IoT, or when a student claims that he knows about IoT, then what are the minimum things that he should know about? Okay, rather than just bookish theoretical knowledge, what things he should learn before he should claim about having some knowledge about IoT. Okay. Okay. So this is the introduction. Okay, so now you can see I'm using like different colors to represent different keywords to give a special focus on different keywords. So I'm going to first give the definition of Internet of Things, then I'm going to look at individual keywords. Okay, so Internet of Things refers to the devices which have unique identities and connected to the internet. Okay, IoT devices have sensing, actuation, and monitoring capabilities. And IoT devices can collect and exchange data with each other or with other applications or centralized server or even cloud. Okay. So now let's look at this definition. So this is the simpler. There are many definitions that exist for Internet of Things. This I find is the simplest one and still cover all the bases. Okay. The first thing is that IoT refers to devices which have unique identities. So we need to have unique identities for these devices because usually we have like thousands of IoT devices deployed in a region. So we need some kind of mechanism to uniquely identify one device out of these 1,000 devices. Good thing is that since almost all of them connected to our World Wide Web, the internet, it is possible to give them an IPv4 or IPv6 address that will work as their identity. Okay. Second thing is that they need to be connected to the internet. Okay. Now here you can see I have written internet slightly differently because even though in most books and yes, most literature talks about connecting IoT devices to the internet, they are talking about the internet with capital I, that is the World Wide Web, so that those IoT devices can be monitored, controlled from anywhere in the world. This is a good thing. This is what is desirable, but it is not extremely necessary. It is not hard and fast rule that they need to be connected to the internet, the World Wide Web. It is also possible that I can have like thousands of devices in, let's say, IIT Roorkee, another 1,000 in IIT Goa, another 1,000 in IIT Indore, something like that. And I'm connecting them through a wide area network, but which is accessible only through IoT, only by IIT community, not to everyone else. It cannot be accessed through the internet from, let's say, from China or from USA, something like that. So, yes, ideally we want everything to be connected to the internet, but it is not necessary. Okay. Okay. Then IoT devices have sensing, actuation, and monitoring capabilities. Now think about it. All these three capabilities, it is not necessary that all devices should have these. Some may have only sensing, some may be able to do actuation. Actuation is performing some kind of action. For example, if I say I have a smart bulb, then bulb can be turned on and off, some kind of action. And they can be monitored for certain, abnormal condition, abnormal environmental condition. Okay? So devices may or may not have all these three, or it may or may have only one of these capabilities. Okay. And finally, IoT devices can collect data if required, and they can exchange data with each other, again, if required. It is not necessary that each and every IoT device should be communicating with other IoT devices. Okay, but yeah, ideally they will be communicating with someone, but there's a possibility they communicate with each other. But mostly current generation IoT systems, IoT devices are directly connected to some kind of either application or some kind of cloud server or some kind of, like a physical server, just like I kept in my office. Okay, so usually some kind of connectivity to some centralized entity is required. So data can be, directly forwarded there, stored there, analyzed. Okay. Okay. So after looking at this definition and all the specific keywords, now you might ask that, okay, sensing, actuation, monitoring. So we have like sensor network already that consists of sensors, sometimes actuators, and it is being it's in the world from last I'll say at least 20, 30 years. Okay, so why we are calling them Internet of Things when we already have a sensors and actuator, or we have a wireless sensor network? Okay, so here the key term that you should look into is called things, Internet of Things. Even though all the things we are looking into are devices, but Internet of Things is precisely developed for the objects, for the things which are not traditionally connected to the internet. Okay, so for example, 20 years ago, you never thought that your refrigerator, your light bulb, even your wallet is connected to the internet, because at that moment there was no, there's no use case, there was no need to connect them. When you're saying there are a few IoT devices I am seeing, there's no need to connect them right now also to the internet, but the point is there's a possibility that we can connect them, and that is the unique thing. Internet of Things, the things which are not traditionally connected to the internet, like our mobile phone or laptop, and we are trying to connect those things to the internet, like bulb and wallet. Okay, that is why it is called Internet of Things. Okay. Okay, so these are the application of IoT. I'm going to very quickly go through them because I think these kind of things you guys already seen in many literatures, many review articles. Probably it is also covered in yesterday's session. So some of the most common applications of IoT are like a smart home, where you can control the smart home appliances, thereby providing ease to the user. Okay, then smart vehicles, where vehicle can communicate with each other, or even some central entities such as roadside unit, or may exchange information related to traffic condition or the fueling station in order to optimize the travel. Okay, then there are smart education, where students and teachers can be connected through smart IoT devices, smart visual portal, so that all the online resources can be available to the students, okay, efficiently. Then there are smart markets, where we can keep track of supply and demand, and so that stacks are always full with the items, we can keep track of them. Then there are smart industries, which are more precisely known as Industry 4.0, where we are trying to automate all the processes by connecting devices with each other through IoT, by allowing devices to communicate with each other, okay, and take necessary actions. Then there are smart transportation, where we have like train, buses, and even your logistics that are being tracked and connected through Internet of Things. So it is easier for us to keep track of everything. For example, the route and the schedule of the train arrival and departure, everything. Then there are smart healthcare, which allow us to monitor the health status location of patients, and in case of any emergency, that IoT devices can help us to directly reach to that particular patient directly, and it can communicate with doctor if necessary. Okay. Then there are smart agriculture, where we can deploy IoT devices to monitor soil condition, temperature, irrigation situation, and even after getting the produce, we can actually monitor the storage facility, where we can monitor again humidity and temperature, and make sure that all the produce is not spoiling. Okay. So these are the most common IoT applications that you might be seeing in the literature, and most of the time, most student projects are related to these domains. Okay. So apart from these, most common applications, I'm going to discuss some unique ones. Okay, some state of the art which currently researchers are looking into, and as a faculty member, I also suggest that these are some of the very unique applications where you can put your hands on and do very good research. Okay, so that one thing that I want to point out, that as I understand that this is a faculty development program, so I'm going to, whenever possible, I'm going to give some kind of unique research directions for each and everything that I'm going to discuss, so you can explore it further for your research. Okay. So first application that I'm going to talk about is the Internet of Underwater Things, or simply IOUT. Okay. So Internet of Underwater Things, so by definition, it is the network of smart interconnected underwater objects. So now you can see it is like, it is just IoT, but the objects are primarily underwater. It is not necessarily, because usually we have a combination of underwater as well as, objects which are above the water, or even sometimes, not even touching the water. Okay. But mostly the idea is, since we are talking about underwater things, underwater objects are the most important entity here. Okay. So on the left hand side, you can see, let me just start a point, laser point. Okay. So on the left hand side, you can see there's a carbon dioxide sensor, which can be, submerged in some water bodies like lakes, ponds, or even ocean, to keep track of CO2 concentration in water. Okay. And how this IOUT looks like. Okay, so you may have these kind of sensor deployed on the seabed. Okay, for example, in this figure on the right, you can see there are sensors on the seabed. Now there can be sensors, okay, somewhere floating between the seabed and the surface top. Okay, there can be few more sensors on the top floating. Okay, so you probably heard the term called buoy. So it is like a small flotation device. Okay, so usually buoy can be we can equip buoy with the sensors also. Okay, now these sensors will collect data, a lot of data. For example, temperature, probably pressure, carbon dioxide, any kind of other things. Okay, So all this information will be collected, and these need to be sent to some kind of central entity for further processing. Okay, but how that is done? Okay, so because see, we are talking about water bodies and considering bodies such as rivers and oceans, the coverage area will be significantly huge. So we have to deploy lots and lots of sensors. Okay, and now in order to collect data from that, we have to actually have many sync nodes. Okay, now we can have sync nodes which are again equipped. Sync node which can be attached along with the buoy, so they can be floating on the surface of the ocean. Okay, they might be collecting data from all these floating sensors. Then there might be some sensors at the seabed from which we can collect data by using autonomous underwater vehicles. Okay, also we can have autonomous surface vehicles, which is more or less like a small ship. Autonomous, it can be controlled remotely, that can move around the surface of the sea and collect data from different things. We can also have a ship which can actually use wireless signal, okay, inside ocean to collect the data from AUV, from sensors. It can also have wireless connection to the satellite in order to forward data directly to some kind of central monitoring station, which may be available offshore. Okay, and you can see there are many components here. It is not always necessary to have all the components. For example, you need to have sensors, you need to have some kind of sync. Okay, however, it is if your ship is capable of sending signals to all the sensors, the sensor can directly provide signal to ship, and ship can directly communicate to monitoring station. In that case, I may not require AUV or ASV or even satellite. But yeah, because as I said, in these water bodies, it's not always possible to have Wi-Fi signal or a 4G mobile signal or mobile tower there. So there's a need for us to have some kind of long-range communication. Okay. Now, one thing that you might say, okay, let's come that part, to that part after a while. So these are some unique IoT applications. You might ask that why I end up deploying sensors inside water. What is the use of that? Okay. So one thing, for the first very important application of IoT is environmental monitoring. Okay, so now apart from oceans, now you see there's a lot of problems, especially in India, that a lot of pollution is going into our rivers, for example, Ganga, Jamuna, and apart from a lot of pollution is going to different ponds and other smaller water bodies. Okay, so the idea is how we can monitor the quality of water, how we can monitor the pollution inside those water bodies. Okay, how we can monitor temperature and pressure inside those water bodies, so we can keep track of like fishes inside that. Okay, apart from that, for example, we can use environmental monitoring to monitor oil and gas pipeline, which are usually used to transport these oil and gases from one part of one coastal area to another coastal area. Okay, so there are various use cases where environmental monitoring will be extremely helpful. Okay. Second domain is the underwater exploration. Yeah, of course, even though we have seen a lot of movies where we want to find lost treasure inside the ocean. Maybe in real world it is not that possible, but still this is one of the very unique application where you can look for lost treasure, or if not, at least submerged submarine or some kind of ships where some unique artifacts can be retrieved. Okay. Then you can keep track of fishes, their movement. So, okay, and then you can actually make use of these IoT devices to explore natural resources. For example, maybe natural gas or some kind of oil or something like that. So it is considering, as I said, it is considering like ocean. It is not feasible to have like multiple bigger ships exploring the entire area. Okay, or even exploring inside the island. Okay, in that case, we can actually make use of Internet of Underwater Things, multiple Internet of IoT devices, which can keep track of all these things, okay, and do exploration. Okay, then comes disaster prevention. So now you see floods, tsunami, and warning that happens in the seabed that are significantly problematic things, and these are the things that we cannot control. So at least if we can get some early warning related to these floods, earthquake, or tsunami, then we can actually evacuate, or maybe shift at least some things, some objects, some things of which is of significantly higher cost to reduce the overall damage. Okay, so an early warning system is extremely necessary, and IoT will be extremely helpful in that case. Okay, then comes the military application. where we can detect the submarine mines, and we can actually set up a surveillance system to keep track of, other vehicles, other kind of ships in the water. Okay. And then finally, there are some other applications, for example, providing location and navigation assistance to, different ships, and provide, do some kind of sports. So even in water sports, it is fairly possible to use these IOUTs. Okay, so these are the important different IOUT applications. Okay, there are many more, but at least I have covered a few important ones. Okay. 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 So now you might say, okay, I have Internet of Things. I already have it. I'll just, put it inside some water protect, some enclosure. So I'll just protect them from, water damage, and I'll just deploy it inside oceans. Okay. So what is unique about it? Why we are looking into IOUT anyway? We'll just deploy that. It will make things simpler. But it is not as simple as it sounds. Okay, the most important challenge that actually there is related to transmission media. Okay, so in our traditional wireless sensor networks, we mostly use radio waves. Radio waves that include, in the band of Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, even 4G network. There are newer technologies like millimeter wave, LoRaWAN. Okay, these are all radio waves. Okay, and radio waves perform really well in our real world environment above shore. Okay, if there are limited number of obstacles, they can propagate at very high speed to approximately like 3 lakh kilometers per second. They can have like really high transmission range, 10 to 100 meters for Wi-Fi, and for LoRa devices, LoRaWAN technology, it's even kilometers. It has significantly good enough transmission range. I know 20 to 50 kbps is significantly small, but let's say IoT devices don't produce that much data. The 250 kbps is good enough. Okay, but if you take those traditional wireless sensor network and you deploy inside ocean, it won't work at all, because the thing is, as soon as these radio waves start propagating inside oceans, because of water, because of salinity of the water, because of different objects, what happens is that radio waves performs really bad inside water. Okay, you may not even get a range of like 5 meters to communicate with different devices, different IOUT end units, IOUT devices. So the idea is, traditionally by default we cannot take sensor network radio waves, sensor network with radio waves and deploy inside ocean. It won't work, and that is why the primary focus is on not only on improving certain parameters of radio waves so they can work somehow inside water, but to make use of acoustic signals or sound waves. Okay, and sound waves are being used for many decades in order to provide underwater communication between submarines and everything. Okay, so some of the properties of underwater sensor network using sound waves is that they have significantly lower propagation speed compared to radio waves in the normal environment. So of course there will be delay involved, but one good thing is that the sound waves can travel for a larger distance compared to radio waves inside water. Okay, so that is one positive thing. Data rate is significantly less, but again, I think considering IOUT application, maybe 10 kbps is good enough. I won't say it is very good, but good enough. Still, research are going on to improve this transmission rate. Okay, so as you can understand, transmission media, which in turn translate to the propagation speed, transmission range, transmission rate, all these things are significant problem for IOUT. These are the primary challenges that researchers are looking to tackle. Okay. Then apart from that, then there's a difficulty of recharge. If they are normal sensor network, we can go there, change the battery, put a charger. It's perfectly all right, but it is not possible for the sensors that are deployed, inside ocean, near to the ocean bed. Okay. Then there is mobility again. And worst case scenario, what will happen in traditional sensor network? A device will fall off from some kind of, let's say, cable or something, and it is easy to track. Okay, but it is not the case of wireless sensor network. You may deploy like thousands sensor nodes inside the river, and after 1 hour, only 3 are there, and rest are in different part of the country, and flown with the current. Okay, so that is a problem with mobility. Okay, and then there is reliability, because these devices are mobile. We are not so sure that whatever data we are receiving, that we not only correct, but also we will be receiving within a limited time. Okay, so there's a problem of reliability. maybe devices going out of range, maybe sync nodes going out of range. This will create a very unreliable network. Okay. So now you can see these are various challenges, and because of that, we cannot use traditional wire sensor network directly with inside oceans directly for Internet of Underwater Things. Okay. So what can be done about it? What currently researchers are looking into? So these are some research problems which you can look into, okay, for your own research, okay, and probably you can suggest your students to have a look into this, okay. So first is the deployment count and location of sync node, okay. So as I said, there may be thousands of nodes, IoT nodes that you will be deploying on, on ocean bed, okay, on the ocean surface or something. Then the idea is, first of all, how you are going to manage the collection of data. Now you will say, I'll use sync node. Okay, how many sync node you will use? Because unlike the sync node that we use in traditional wireless sensor network, which are, I'll say, significantly cheap. A simple Raspberry Pi will do the job for most of the cases. Okay, but it is not usually the case with Internet of Underwater Things. Okay, so the cost is high, and if you have limited cost, then you have to look into, okay, how many should I buy? How many sync nodes should I buy? And where exactly to place them? Because the placement also matters. If I place them inefficiently, then some sensor nodes will never be able to connect to sync and never able to send the data. Okay. Not only that, there is also a problem with energy. If I have a lot of sync nodes, it will consume a lot of energy. Okay. Ideally, it should, but it is also possible for us to do some kind of sleep strategy there where they can activate themselves. Okay. And connect to the IoT nodes, get data, and again go back to sleep and saving a lot of power. Okay, so cost and energy are two main constraints. Okay, when you talk about providing ubiquitous connectivity, uninterrupted connectivity to the end node. Okay, then there is mobility and tracking. I already discussed that. In most water bodies, these devices that are deployed will be mobile. They will move slightly a bit if they are not anchored to the ocean bed. Okay. And if they move, then there should be some way to track them and recover them, because these are costly things. Unlike, as I said, just like sync nodes, even the IoT device, the end devices are not cheap. Okay, maybe internet circuitry will cost the same thing, but protecting them from water damage, providing GPS connectivity in the water, or any kind of connectivity which help us track them will increase their cost significantly. So mobility and tracking of end units is another open research problem, how you can do that. And there's related to communication technologies. This also I have partially discussed, that how we can actually send data from end unit to sync nodes, and from sync node to your central monitoring station. Okay, so there's some kind of route optimization that we can do. Okay, should end device send directly signal to ship, or it should send to some intermediate device which can attach its own data and then forward. So should we do single hop communication or multi hop communication? If I do multi hop communication, what kind of route I should follow? Okay, and again, using this multi hop communication, until what how many hops should be there in the multi hop communication? Because I can use as many hops as possible. That will increase the range, but that will also increase the battery life. That will also reduce the battery life of intermediate devices which are being part of this multi hop communication. Okay, then there is something related to cost optimization. Yes, of course, we prefer to use existing Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Zigbee protocols underwater. Okay, because they are cheap. They are very cheap to come by. Okay, I can find a cheapest IoT module with Wi-Fi capability as low as 180 rupees, Indian rupees. That is like extremely cheap. Okay, so cost is another problem because I know these are available for lower price, but they cannot work underwater. So what is the point of that? Okay, they need to work, but still I want to reduce the cost. And how can I reduce the cost? Should I improve the optimization? Should I remove the cost of sync nodes? So there are various parameters that are involved to reduce the overall cost of this underwater sensor network. Okay, and finally, there are problems related to security and standardization. Again, this is a very unique research problem. Researchers are still looking into it. So as of now, based on my current information, there is nothing related to the security policy, whether security related to theft or security related to network security. Okay, related to security and standardization of hardware and protocol. So it may happen that probably, let's say, China is deploying some kind of underwater sensor network, and we are deploying some other kind. Then our it is not possible for exchange the devices and they will work directly, just like it happens with your mobile phone and laptop. Okay, so the idea is there's some kind of standardization necessary, just like it happens with other smart home devices, other IoT devices. Okay, so this is another interesting open research problem where researchers are looking into. Okay, this is okay. Now, second technology that second unique application that I'm going to talk about is Internet of Drones. As the name suggests, we are talking about how we can use drones as IoT devices and allow interconnection between them, as well as interconnection of drones with the internet. Okay. Now, drones, which we usually, it's a very common word that we use for almost every kind, every kind of flying object, almost every kind. Okay. But more precise keywords are unmanned aerial system, UAS, or unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs. Okay. These are the most primarily used keywords in the literature. You can also, but you can look for all these key terms. There are different papers using different keywords, so it's perfectly all right to use any of these keywords. Okay. I'm not going to go deeper into the hardware or the design of the drones, but this will give you a basic idea that there can be different kind of drones. For example, you are very familiar with drones which may look like helicopters, then there are parrot disco drones and predator drones. This is really used, of course, not for sensing precisely, I will say, but many other military applications. Then they are, like these nano drones, the spreading wings drones. These three kind of drones you usually see also as toys. Okay, so but it is also possible to include some kind of sensors there. It is also possible to include some kind of long-range communication technology, so that they can be part of a bigger Internet of Drones system rather than just using them for playing. Okay. Okay, so there are different kind of drones. You can have a look into that for different applications. They have different features for different use cases. Different kinds are used. Okay, different kind of drones are used. Okay. Now, again, let's do some kind of discussion where we can distinguish between Internet of Drone Things, or IODT, with the drones that we already have, or the UAVs, network of UAVs that we already have. Okay, so before the invention of keyword Internet of Drone Things, we have something called flying ad hoc networks, or FANETs, where we have multiple UAVs or multiple drones that are flying and doing some kind of actuation, for example, taking some pictures or probably measuring temperature or some kind of a smoke or something like that, and they may communicate with each other, and they may communicate with this central entity, some kind of entity which is far away, through some kind of long range wireless communication protocol. Okay, so that is the traditional thing that happens with the flying ad hoc network, FANET. Okay, but what Internet of Drone Things says is that in FANET, we are going to add the capability of cloud computing. We are going to add some smart sensors. We are going to add fog computing. So I'm going to discuss about fog computing, which allow you to do some high-end computation at the end rather than sending everything to the cloud or to the server for processing. Okay, but I'm going to discuss that in detail after a while. Okay, so yes, we have like drones, but we add something related to IoT, cloud computing, smart sensors, fog computing, and that will, wholesome become Internet of Drone Things. Okay, so that is the primary thing. So think about it as like we have FANETs, we added few more things, few more additional things. Okay, at least this is the simplest definition. This is not the precise one. This is the simplest definition I can give. Okay. Other differences related to, as I said, real-time complex operation. So when we talk about FANETs, it is only possible when you have very strong connectivity, because every time FANETs, drones in FANETs take some data, they have to send it to some central entity where some kind of computation happens. Okay. On the other hand, with the help of fog computing, with the help of, let's say, cloud computing, some smart sensors, it is possible to do at least some kind of complex operation, some kind of complex computing. Okay. In the on the fly, in the device itself, in the drone itself, rather than sending everything to the central entity. Hence, if there is no internet connectivity or limited internet connectivity, it is possible to actually have some kind of computation analytics there. Okay. Then again, as I said, support for latest information is very limited in FANETs, because, as I said, FANETs doesn't have to send everything through the internet. If internet is not available, updated information cannot be propagated. But it is not necessary for IOUT. Only in case of some troublesome event, some unique information they have to send, they can send it. Rest they can actually manage locally and process locally. Okay. And yes, cloud-based information that I have submitted. If you have some cloud-related application, it is easier to deploy in IoT compared to FANETs. Operation, they are mainly focused on ground and air, but it is also possible to have some kind of, I won't say underwater, but near water, or on top of water bodies. It is also possible to have some kind of drones there. Okay. Then yeah, about the flying assistance and safety, UAVs doesn't have precisely according to specification. They don't have any kind of flying assistance. Here they are usually controlled some kind of human being at the end. Okay, there's no safety precautions. If human being is not attentive, these UAVs may crash into human beings or buildings or even birds. Okay. On the other hand, Internet of Drone things actually approved by Federal Aviation Administration. Okay, and after approval, they have to follow certain protocols, some certain precautions, so that they won't create any problem with the existing, other flying objects. They should not enter the restricted area like near airport. So there are specifications related to that. So it make things simpler. Okay. Right. So this is the primary difference between when I say UAV network of FANETs and the Internet of Drone thing. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about some very simple, very unique use cases. Okay. So first of all is the agriculture. Now you can see there's a very interesting drone. So when you look into drones, one of the very famous companies, DJI, which create very unique drones for very unique applications. They are quite stable. Okay. So this, when you want to look, my suggestion is to look into these drones. So you can see a figure where a drone is actually spraying pesticide, insecticide on top of crop. Okay. Not only that, it is also possible to put some kind of camera there, some kind of sensor there. So these kind of drones can monitor the soil quality. They can monitor how crop are maturing, what are the moisture level. Okay. And if there are any kind of wild animals, not only we can track it, but I will say these drones are scary enough, big enough. We can also, use them to chase wild animals. While, as you can see, like cow and buffaloes are significant problem when it comes to produce, because as soon as they get a chance, they will try to eat it. So at least, these can be helpful for monitoring and scaring them away from a lot when the field size is significantly large. Okay. Okay. I'll say I'm sorry about there might be some kind of background noise. Certainly there's some kind of construction activity started this morning, which I cannot control. Okay, so if there is like way too much background noise or disturbance, please let me know. So I'll try to probably shift to another location. Okay. 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 Another use case for Internet of Underwater Things is where we can use some kind of rescue operations, or for example here you can see these are the drones, but we are actually looking at some kind of I won't say, as I said, precisely underwater operation, but something related to water. Okay, so consider a situation like Titanic, where it is not, see, even if one ship comes to rescue, the limited number of staff will limit the number of people that can be saved. If we have some drones, something like this, which are equipped with some flotation devices, they can quickly go to different locations. They can use image processing to keep track of people who are drowning. Okay, they can quickly deploy this flotation device to them until a human being or someone can reach them. Okay, and assist them. This is a very, very, very interesting use case of Internet of Drone things. Okay, and where we can quickly provide assistance for people who are drowning, or some kind of retrieval of some emergency objects or packet that was spread due to some kind of explosion in ship or something like that. This is a very, very interesting use case. Okay, so this is one of the drone, I think its name is S200 rescue drone. If you wish, you can search online. Very interesting idea, and my suggestion is to look into it. Okay. Then there are a few more cases. For example, you might have heard that Amazon is planning to use some kind of drones to deliver some small objects, like, for example, medicine or mobile phones in remote areas. Okay, so for example, Amazon is not, as of now, have reached to remote villages or something. So their idea is to use these kind of drones. This is not only cost effective, this will be extremely fast. Of course, I heard a joke that Maybe it is not feasible in all the scenarios, especially in Indian scenario, because then, guys can be standing on top of their buildings and they will be like, with what is that? I don't remember the English word as of now. In Hindi, we call it gulel. Okay, so like they will like, okay, now today what we are going to win. Let's see. So they just target these delivery drones, and yes, today I won a mobile phone. So yeah, some kind of safety for those drones is more necessary than safety to human being from the drones. Okay, so yeah, this is a very weird situation. So in some countries it might be the case. Okay, but yeah, this is a very good idea where we can deliver different items through drones quickly, efficiently, cost effectively. Okay, not only that, there are some certain companies, for example, the second image showing some kind of ambulance drone that has basic life support. So in case of some kind of situation, emergency situation appears, for example, you are tracking in Himalaya region where there's no hospital nearby, and quickly this ambulance drone can fly to your location, take you in, provide decent enough, emergency supplies, some life support, and quickly fly you to the nearest hospital. It will be extremely efficient in this domain. Okay, then there are military military related applications. For example, this is, as you can see, there's a Mavic bird drone, which is, at a far distance, it is fairly difficult to distinguish from a simple bird. Okay, so it looks like a bird, but it is actually a drone. It can perform some kind of surveillance. It can provide some kind of safety equipment, some kind of early threat detection to military personnel. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about finally the research problem that you can look into when you talk about drones. So first thing first, cost. Yes, everybody wants to play with drone. Frankly saying, even if I'm not interested in Internet of Drone things, I always wanted a drone, and I think most of you also want that. But a good enough drone, for example, I think let's say this is even a high-end drone, even a smaller version of this drone, okay, may cost 1 to 1.5 lakh rupees in Indian currency, and that is a big problem. Okay, so cost is a problem. Okay, is there any way? But let's not talk about playing or making video. Let's talk about in terms of Internet of Things. So instead of having a bigger drone, should I buy various smaller drones and ask them to flow in different area, collect data from sensor node? Is that more cost effective? Is that more energy efficient? So these kind of things you have to look into. If you have thousands of nodes deployed in a simulation region, then you have to understand whether one drone of $1,000 is better idea than 10 drones of each $100. Okay, that is the thing that you have to look into. You also have to look into cost and energy efficiency perspective when you talk about networking, because a drone with Wi-Fi only connectivity required a Wi-Fi access point somewhere nearby. So it is that will involve any additional cost, additional cost and additional energy for Wi-Fi access point. Okay, so why don't we use some kind of long-range wireless technology? So I'm going to talk about LoRa technology. Okay, where we use long-range technology so that drone can send data and communicate with a controlling agent from like 10 kilometers apart. So that is one very good thing in terms of cost and energy efficiency. Okay. Then there's something related to placement and trajectory optimization. As I said, we have a lot of IoT devices in a bigger region. Where should I ask these drones to hover? Okay. Or is there any way I can actually find out the trajectory where only a single drone can move around the entire space? Okay. And collect data from all the devices. Okay, in that case, some kind of machine learning will be extremely useful, because IoT devices are not like human beings. They do not send data randomly unless there is some kind of critical situation happens. They are like clockwise. Every day in the morning they will send some kind of data. So if we have the idea about what are the different devices, what are their locations, how much data they want to send, or how much long time they want to send, then you can actually optimize the trajectory, and probably a single drone will be more than enough to collect data from, let's say, thousands of IoT devices in 10-kilometer range. Okay, so again, this is not only efficient, this is also cost efficient in terms of networking, but also in terms of cost and energy. Then finally, there are something related, open research on related to security, safety, and reliability. Okay, when you talk about security, for example, if my drone is lost, how I'm going to track it, how I'm going to retrieve it, it costs a lot. Okay, so I have to retrieve it. Then there's something related to safety. For example, if drone is encountered with some kind of building or some kind of like, birds or something, can it avoid itself and avoid a collision and save itself? Okay, then there's something related to reliability. that in case, UAV connection is not available to the, central monitoring station, can I send it to nearby UAV, and that UAV can send it to another UAV, and then this multi-op communication can happen in order to provide reliable internet connectivity. So these are various open research problems that you guys can look into. Okay. Okay, so before I proceed further, I think I'm talking for a long amount of time. Okay, so what my suggestion is, I'll take some questions. Okay, then I continue with IoT for cyber physical system. So if you guys have any kind of questions, I'm happy to take some questions for 4 to 5 minutes, then I can continue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Can you throw some light on the need for compressive sensing algorithms since we are handling huge data in IoT applications?
Okay.
Is that a good research we can look for? I'm just asking you, sir.
So this is a good research, but see, again, as I said, it depends on application. Because I'll say, and I may not be very precise about the number, I'll say around 90% of the IoT related application does not require significant amount of data. It's a very small amount of data. Later I'm going to talk about when I'm going to talk about LoRaWAN technology, very famous technology, which is going to be prominent for IoT communication. What they say is that daily only 200 bytes of data, not kilobytes, oh my god, only 200 bytes of data is enough from one IoT device. That is all they want to send. So amount of data may not be significant that they need to be compressed at the individual IoT device. Okay, but of course, when they reach to sync node, there are some kind of compression may be required based on what kind of internet connectivity available to the sync device or some intermediate device. Okay, so yes, this is a very good research problem, but you should look into the application for that also, because if you say I have a traditional simple network and I'm going to do data compression, then people may ask questions that why you need that. On the other hand, let's say I have an internet of drones, which is actually recording videos, live videos. Okay, and that will be a lot of data, and it is not doing any kind of edge processing. That means every recorded video need to be sent to somewhere. Okay, some central entity. In that case, yes, you need to look into data compression technique. Okay, data compression approach.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Second question is from Aditi Raj, and she's asking what are the sensors which can be used with UAVs for localization, and at the same time she's asking how to protect the sync node from the underwater organism like fishes, etc.
Okay, so okay, sorry, I forgot the first question was.
Yes, should I repeat again, sir?
Yeah, please.
Aditi Raj is asking, sir, what are the sensors which can be used with AUVs for localization?
Okay, localization.
And at the same time, she's asking how to protect the sync node from the underwater organisms like fishes, etc.
Okay. So talking about localization, so the most simple one and widely available is the GPS or GLONASS module that you can actually just deploy. You can add it in your drones. Okay, so that can easily you can get the pinpoint location using the satellite coordinates. Okay, using the satellite, they can actually send that pinpoint coordinates. So for example, if you lost a drone or you lost any underwater vehicle, not underwater, because it is not that feasible to get GPS signal underwater, but overwater vehicle, then this GPS coordinate can help you with that. But again, as I said, that involves a lot of cost because it is a costly module, I'll say, compared to other modules. And not only that, the problem is with the, I'll say, okay, as of now, let's just talk about the cost. Okay, so cost is one thing. Okay, so what we can do is what is happening in traditional Wi-Fi system is that there's an central monitoring station can keep track of the signal strength. Okay, signal strength of these devices. Based on the signal strength, it can get the approximate location. Okay, so in a 10-kilometer field, if you can say that okay, your device is somewhere in this 100-meter range, so of course it will take some time to search that, but still the area is narrowed. Okay, and that will reduce the cost of your each device. You don't have to deploy GPS, And yes, the one thing that I forgot is about the energy consumption. GPS consume a lot of energy. Okay, so you don't have to, your energy consumption will be less. Okay. Second is that about the protection with fishes. Okay. Okay, there are some protection that we can provide. For example, providing a big enclosure, a strong enclosure. So, if a shark or a whale hits it, then it won't be damaged. No water goes inside. But think about this, if it's a really huge whale and it just swallow the sensor node, then there is nothing can be done about it in that regard. Okay. Yeah, some protection by using some kind of waterproofing enclosures, by anchoring them to seabed. Okay, that is possible. Okay. But apart from that, yes, that is why this is one of the tricky things that can be done and cannot be done based on the use cases, based on where they are deployed. Okay, so I think I'm because of limited time, I'm going to continue. If
second question, sir. Second question is from Rishabh Dev Pandey, and he's asking: is there any predefined metric system to measure the performances of IoT applications?
When they say applications, it sound different. For example, it depends on the application to application. Okay, so usually, for example, I'll first let's say you are looking into you have an application which is allowing you to fly drones in some field and collect some video data. Then you will say that the video quality is significant enough. If I zoom in, then I can actually look into the precise objects that are available in the field. So when you talk about applications, yes, they are different based on application, different requirement. I need at least this much quality video with these many frames per second. Okay, maybe when I'm detecting some kind of fire, I want this video to be reached within a couple of seconds or within a couple of minutes. I do not want this video to reach me after 2 hours when the situation of fire is significantly changed. So yes, but more or less, I'll say when I talk about IoT, Internet of Things, it is requirements are more related to, I'll say, networks, then comes to application. And in network, we have like bit rate, we have like, energy efficiency, we have like delay. All these are primary factors, I'll say. So these are the things that need to be optimized. These are the challenges that they have to look into.
Next question is, sir, from one from Associate Professor from Beltech, Chennai. He's asking that in forest area, how drone will support because the signal strength is weaker. And again, he's asking how sensor will effectively utilize, can be effectively utilized. How sensor can be effectively utilized.
Okay, so first I'm going to talk about sensors. So again, there can be, as I said, two kinds of sensor. One you can deploy in different trees to look for forest fire. So when there's temperature, there's the smoke, they can at least collect the data. I won't say transfer, but at least collect the data. Then you can have drones flying over a bigger region where then drone can act as a sink and collect data from these sensors. Okay, we can also have a situation where we don't, it is not possible to deploy, like lakhs of sensors within a forest region. So we can actually just make use of drones, fly at a lower altitude, keep detecting smoke and fire. This is also possible. But this is all about, sensing. Now talking about the communication, for that, as I said, that if time permits, I'm going to talk about something called LoRaWAN or NB-IoT. So these are the long-range wireless communication technology. Long-range means it is possible to communicate for, if it is forest area, there are no buildings, no obstacles. Okay, at least after a certain height, you can have a coverage rate up to 20 to 30 kilometers. So think about this, you have a one access point, one gateway somewhere 30 kilometers away and you're still communicating with your drone. Yes, there are long-range communication technologies. And in the worst case, if nothing happens, then you can always have satellite to provide coverage. Yeah.
Now one last question from Asmita Jagtap. Sir, how did you measure the voltage using sensors? And what are the most used sensor in Internet of Things?
Okay, for voltage measurement, there are again, the exact keyword as of now, I don't remember, but there are sensors. If you connect to that, then you can actually measure the voltage as well as current there. Not only that, voltage, current, as well as the entire energy consumption. Okay, because most of the time I'll say, for my case at least, okay, I won't generalize. Most of the time we don't especially care about voltage and current rather than the actual energy that is being drawn from the battery. So I can understand that, okay, if I have 1000 mAh battery, then how much it will last, okay, 2 days or 3 days. So there are modules they are current sensors. So you can just simply search online current sensors for Arduino, voltage sensor for Arduino. Okay. Then apart from that, others, if you talk about other sensors, most common sensors, people are doing very simple test-based simulation by analyzing. So there is something called DH111, if I'm not wrong, DH11 or DH111, something like that. There's a very small module that has the capability to detect temperature as well as humidity. These are the two most common one that we have used. But apart from that, there are many more. There are some 10 different kind of gas sensors that can detect different kind of gases. For example, leakage of LPG or carbon dioxide. Okay, there are even environmental monitoring sensor which can detect particles of 2.5 and 10 size. Okay, so lots and lots of sensors. Okay. But it again depends on use cases. There are even sensors that can detect simplest vibration. There are sensors that allow you to give coordinate locations. Okay, so my suggestion is to have a look and idea of basic sensor. Just look for a keyword called sensor packs for Arduino. Okay, if you just look sensor pack for Arduino on Google, usually will find some Amazon or some kind of links where there will be a kit which have all the most common sensors that people are using. Okay, but again, these are the most common sensors mostly used by faculty members or students for simple projects. But for specific applications, specific sensors need to be developed or maybe procured from some international location. Okay, so because of limited time, so I'm going to continue right now. Okay, I'm going to continue right now with the presentation. Then in the end, I'll take a few more questions. Okay. Now, the third unique use case of Internet of Things is Internet of Cyber Physical System. Okay. So cyber physical system, what I'm going to define this. Okay. So cyber physical systems are intelligent systems where you have sensors, actuators, and controllers. Am I audible? Okay. I hope I am audible and my screen is visible. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm getting some kind of disturbance. Can someone mute their mic? Okay. Okay. So some kind of intelligent system, sensors and actuators, and they are equipped with controllers. Okay. So that they can interact with the physical world. So we can have interaction of the physical world and cyber world. Okay. Now it looks like a very complicated definition, and frankly saying, if you look into cyber physical system online, you will find even more complicated definitions here. Okay. So I'm going to give a very simple example. Okay. Cyber physical system, the main idea is it is an intelligent system which connects the cyber world with the physical world. Okay. Now, very simple examples. You probably heard of games like Pokemon Go, where you actually use your camera to capture the physical world. You have the real physical world, and then the game actually adds some gaming characters like Pikachu or something on top of that. So when you move in the physical system, in the physical world, in the cyber world, in the your mobile phone, things also changes. So another example is Google Lens. Okay, where you can actually turn on Google Lens and scan a particular area. For example, I can be in New York, Times Square, and I can just use my camera. As soon as camera detects some kind of video, it will actually identify this is the Times Square, this is probably the restaurant, this is the subway station, something like that. So physical, it is it is actually augmenting the cyber world on top of physical world. Okay, so that is very interesting. Another thing that recently TeamViewer, one of the remote desktop application introduced, is something called TeamViewer Pilot, where you can actually, I can actually show you something like, for example, this is the keyboard, and I can draw on top of that you have to push this button, and this will be extremely helpful for our old age parents and grandparents which don't know how to do things. You can actually they can show the video. Okay, they can do a video call, and here you can draw things on top of that, and it will be visible to them. So you can understand physical world being augmented by cyber system. Okay, very interesting idea. Another very interesting product that I have seen is a smart helmet, where helmet keeps on recording where you are driving and keeps on giving you information about what are your speed, time, temperature, your location. Okay, it also has a back camera which allow you to keep track of vehicles coming from the back. Of course, I won't say this is a this is a very smart helmet. It may be distracting for some people. So still, there are many things that need to be looked into. But this is another very good example where we can use IoT devices to keep track of the environment. Okay, and we use concept of augmented reality to get that collected information in a consolidated, understandable form to the user on the fly. Okay. Now you may say, okay, these are good, devices. Everything is, seems interesting. But what are the open research problems? These IICANs, you are already seeing these kind of devices. Then why they are not used widely? Okay, I'm going to look at the scenario. One very simple example: you are sitting inside a stadium watching some kind of football match or something, and you can use a virtual reality or VR headsets. Those are available online, okay, for quite cheap. So VR headsets can be given to audience, okay, on by asking for certain prize or something. And the idea is when certain event happens, for example, someone scored a goal, they can quickly press a button and request for replay of that goal. Okay, so they will have, they will be watching through these VR headsets. They will be watching a live match, but on the click of a button, they can actually do some kind of replay. They can get some information about the player. Okay, now the thing about this seems interesting, but when we talk about situation like this, large amount of high definition data need to be streamed to these VR headsets. You cannot give them some really blurred, videos. Okay, so the idea is how that can be tackled, because we are already suffering with a lot of data on the cellular network, Wi-Fi network. How we are going to support thousands of such VR devices, okay, in such a small area. Okay, so idea is we can make use of device-to-device communication where we can send, replay of, let's say, some particular event. For example, one goal happened, then there is a chance that most of the people will be looking at the replay of that goal. Okay, so we can send to one device and that can send to another one, it can send to another one. Another thing is that instead of using, traditional Wi-Fi system, traditional 4G LTE system, we are going to decouple, the uplink and downlink. That means a user has to press a button that I want replay of this particular goal. Now that is a very small amount of data that need to be sent to some central entity, some base station or something. Okay, so that can be done using Wi-Fi, using 4G LTE, a very simple way. So it doesn't, put too much pressure on the network. But in the downlink data, the video that comes as a response can be transmitted on another spectrum. For example, millimeter wave, which is not as of now used by anywhere. It has a lot of a spectrum. Okay, and it works in low range very efficiently. So in the uplink, using traditional Wi-Fi, we'll get some small amount of data. In the downlink, when we want to send video to these users on their VR headset, we are going to use a supplementary spectrum, millimeter wave, and it will make things better in terms of, user experience. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about state-of-the-art communication technologies. Okay, so I have slightly discussed about this. And this is a very interesting, and I primarily work in this area. So even though I say I work in the area of Internet of Things, I want to be extremely precise. I work in the networking domain of Internet of Things. Okay, so there are people who are developing the hardware modules. They work in different area. My area is to how to optimize networking. So I'm going to talk about the most important, the most interesting, and as of now, I'll say most widely used. Okay, not right now most widely used, but very soon most widely used communication technology, which comes under the bigger domain of low power wide area networking. As the name suggests, it consumes low power and it provides networking to a very wide area. Very wide means in terms of kilometers. Okay, so now you already have, as of now, IoT devices use Zigbee, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. They cover a smaller range. Okay, and even though these are working for smart home and smart offices, perfectly all right, but these are not good for applications where the coverage area, the area where you're deploying the sensor nodes are large. For example, if you want to monitor the livestock, okay, if you want to monitor the livestock, then, or you want to monitor the crops in a very big area, or you want to use smart metering, for example, the electricity meters you want to track inside a city. These are significantly larger area, and we cannot expect someone to deploy Wi-Fi access point once in every 100 meters. It will involve a lot of cost. Okay, so the idea is there any way I can deploy just one access point which looks more or less like a Wi-Fi, and it provide coverage to like 50,000 devices in like 8 to 10 kilometers. If that is possible, I will be very happy. And keeping that in mind, researchers started developing newer technology, which come in the broader umbrella of LPWAN. Okay, the idea is try to make things cheaper, low cost as possible. try to make technology in a way that a single access point can support thousands of devices, and try to make something which can provide long range connectivity. Try to make something which has the least energy consumption. So if I put a battery inside an IoT device, I may have to replace it once in 2 years or 3 years, and that will be a very good idea. Okay. Now, the first question that you may ask, okay, we already have a cellular network. It has a very high coverage. Okay. Very high coverage in tens of kilometers. Why not we are using it already? Why we are talking about a newer technology in this domain when we have a long-range cellular network? So I'll say this, yes, there are already exist IoT devices that works in the cellular, that uses cellular networking technology. But again, let me tell you this, cellular network are not traditionally designed to support IoT devices. We may use cellular network, but the idea is they are not efficient. They are not efficient protocol, because cellular network, what they expect is IoT devices will be mobile. There are a lot of data coming from them, but this is not the case. IoT devices are usually constant at a location. They don't send too much data. So this is a unnecessary headache on the cellular infrastructure. So that is why the idea is there are still available modules where you can insert SIM card and it will work on the cellular network, but that is not desirable when you have like thousands of IoT devices. Okay. Okay. So first technology is, so first initially what people thought, let's just improve the cellular network first, okay, rather than thinking about newer technology. So what they said, okay, so what we are going to do, we have the 4G network, which is called long-term evaluation, LTE network. So I'm going to change it a bit. Okay, so I have some kind of a spectrum of LTE. I'm going to use a very, very small spectrum, probably 200 kilohertz. I'm going to use very small spectrum here. Okay, and that spectrum will help me to support thousands of IoT devices. On the other hand, larger chunk of a spectrum that I have, that will be used by traditional cellular user mobile phones. I'm not going to affect them. That is another thing. Another idea is usually cellular spectrum is divided into bands, and one band is given to one cellular operator like Airtel, another band can be given to another operator. And in order to provide some kind of, interference avoidance there, we provide some kind of guard band in between those bands. So I can use that guard band also, rather than, some kind of a spectrum in the core, band. I can use guard band to provide just IoT devices. Not only that, let's say sooner or later 2G spectrum will be going out of the scenario, and most people will be end up using 3G, 4G, and possibly 5G network. So we can divide this 2G spectrum into smaller chunks. No cellular data users are transmitting there. So those smaller chunks can be given to different access point. Okay, for communication. Okay, so that is, there are very possible ways we can use a small chunk of current cellular spectrum and use it for IoT communication. So I'll have the advantage of, I already have base stations. They are already providing bigger larger coverage. So yes, all is well. The only thing is that I want to support different users with different technologies. So I'm going to use a small chunk, use different protocols, and it will work. Okay. And the good thing is that you don't have to change significant things in the network. So even though if you are not familiar with 4G network architecture, don't worry, you can ignore this figure. But the idea is everything that you are seeing here, okay, apart from this IoT cloud server, if you can remove that, apart from this, everything else is already a part of cellular architecture. Everything is available. Your base station, mobility management entity, everything is already available. The only thing that you have to do is add a application server, IoT cloud application server. It may or may not support cloud, but there is some application server. So apart from providing connectivity to your mobile phones, it can provide connectivity to smart infrastructure, healthcare, security, surveillance, transportation system. Data will transmit in the same way that it does for cellular mobile phones, and in the end, it will end up in the application server. So the good thing is that we don't have to change much. Okay, I should not say this. Those who are working with protocol, they have to do a lot. But let's say, as you and me, when you look into this, there's no significant change because you already have the existing infrastructure and most of the protocols. Okay, some minor changes are required. Okay, rather than deploying an entire new system. Okay. 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 So this is okay. This I have already done. Okay. So how you can start? So when I said this, so this is the first technology which actually augment the existing cellular network. Okay. But I also said that sometimes it is also what researchers are looking into to create a newer technology, completely different from cellular network, and that is only meant for IoT devices. In extremely simple terms, I can say this is kind of like cellular networking equivalent for IoT devices. I'll have different base stations just for IoT devices. They provide long range communication. Okay. And for that, one of the most prominent technology is the LoRaWAN, okay, long range wide area networking protocol. And as the name suggests, it has extremely long range. But but sadly it depends on the spectrum that it is being used. For different countries using different spectrum. In India, we use 868 megahertz spectrum, which let's say in open field provide around 10 to 12 kilometers of coverage. Okay, a simple device. This device is smaller than your traditional Wi-Fi access point. You know, that is small. You can deploy it on top of your let's say house. Okay, and it can provide coverage in like tens of kilometers. In city scenario also, for example, inside IIT campus, it may provide coverage for 2 to 3 kilometers, which is also acceptable enough considering the cost of these devices just like 5 to 6,000 rupees. So think about this. You can provide connectivity to 50,000 IoT devices inside IIT without Wi-Fi, without Bluetooth, without Zigbee by only deploying this on top of the building. Think about this, the cost efficiency, energy efficiency, and everything. You are not affecting cellular users and everything goes very well. Okay. So usually you deploy these kind of devices, which are called gateways or concentrators, okay, in different locations, which are connected to end devices, your IoT devices, which will send data here. Now these devices may be connected to 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, or Ethernet to some kind of network server. Okay. Now it may be network server, it may not be network server. Okay. And those network servers actually host different kind of applications. For example, I have a bunch of devices. I have an application which keeps track of different dogs. Okay. So what happens is that different pets that have some IoT devices being connected to LoRaWAN gateways, where data get consolidated, forwarded to network server, and it is whatever data is available, it is shown to application server that where are different pets, where are their locations, are some of them lost. Okay, if the battery device of any of the pet tracker is low, everything can be done there. Okay, so this is a very simple architecture of LoRaWAN. Okay, and if you want to work in IoT from now on, my suggestion is to give an extreme focus on this. This is the holy grail kind of thing here. This is the best thing that you can work on as of now. Okay, because this is cheapest as well as the most efficient one. Okay. Okay, I'm going to because of lack of time, I'm going to skip this a bit. Okay. 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 So I'm going to come to now state-of-the-art IoT architecture. Okay. So those who are familiar with the IoT architecture, they are already like 3-layer, 5-layer architecture available, sometimes even 6-layer architecture available on the internet on different different online resources, different papers. But I'm going to talk about architecture in terms of having something newer integrated or like a cross-domain architecture. Okay. So let's give an idea about something called social IoT. Okay. So again, I have in the IoT network here. For example, let's say IIT Roorkee. I have IoT network here. Now the idea is, let's say one of my colleagues comes here. He has some IoT devices. He's my colleague. I trust him completely. But when he came from his office to my office, his IoT devices are going out of range. So what I say, okay, since you are my friend, I trust you. I allow your IoT device to connect to my gateway. And in the same way, later on when I come to your office, you can allow my IoT device to connect to your gateway. So a single entity, a single person don't have to spend a lot of money to provide ubiquitous connectivity over the entire area of IoT. We as a human being own things. We own gateways. We own smart objects. We own sensors. Okay. So since we are connected to each other on social networks such as Facebook, why don't we use that trust of social network to allow our devices such as IoT device or gateway to communicate with each other, to support each other? So this will not make things even efficient, not only make things efficient in terms of cost and connectivity, it will also increase the trust and social bonding between users. Okay. So for example, whenever you go to your friend's house, you feel free to ask what is the Wi-Fi password. Okay. And he gave it to you. In the same way, so that is a perfect example where your mobile phone is connected to your friend's Wi-Fi access point because you two know each other. But can we use it, instead of, devices asking personally, for a human being it is possible, but not for the IoT devices. Is there any way devices can detect each other? For example, can a device detect, okay, there's a Wi-Fi access point. It will send some signal and Wi-Fi will say, hey, I belong to this user. And then device will check. This user is actually friend of the person who own that device. So yes, it is allowed. It will send some kind of authentication packet. It will be authenticated, and user can and device can directly connect to that gateway. Okay. Okay. So this is a very simple example. Again, there are so many things. So I'm going to just look at only a few things. For example, let's say this is one person called Antonio, and his house. There's one person, let's say Antonio, and there are other people in the nearby region. Okay, in his society. What is happening is that Antonio owns a house, and inside house there are multiple IoT devices. In the same way, different other neighbors also own a house and other IoT devices. What we allow Antonio house to communicate with the devices of his friends and neighbors' house. So in case a central entity in let's say some kind of small server in the Antonio house detect that it is consuming a lot of energy compared to all in the nearby region, then it can detect any kind of anomaly. It can actually check for some kind of status, or some ACs are creating problems which are costing a lot of energy consumption. Okay, this is possible when we allow Antonio and his neighbors who are in a close social bonding, and we allow their devices to communicate with each other. Okay, and that is one very good example of that. Okay, there are many more applications, but I'm going to skip that. So anyway, when you look at the video, you can go through whatever text I have written. It is very easy to understand. Okay. Okay. Now, in the end, I'm going to talk about edge computing, another unique architecture. So again, I have as I said, I'm going to augment something extra in the existing IoT network. Okay. So this is I already have an IoT network, and let's say what is happening right now, any kind of data. For example, temperature, pressure, humidity being collected by IoT devices. I call them dumb devices because they don't have enough intelligence. Their idea is just to collect some information, send it to some server. So every time they will just collect some information, the sensor collects some information using certain protocol, they send it to some cloud application service or a central server or a cloud server or something, and everything will happen there. Now the advantage is that these sensors can be very cheap. Their idea is just to collect and send. Too much computation will be done on the cloud domain. Okay, a lot of data coming there, a lot of processing happens, and sometimes it is not even required to do that much processing. Okay, for example, let's say I deploy a lot of temperature sensor near certain turbines. So the idea is whenever temperature goes beyond certain value, then there's something serious happening, and at that point of time I have to inform the cloud server. Okay. Okay, and some action can be taken. So the idea is, why don't we make these sensors, or some device between the sensor and the cloud, much more complex, okay, so that only and only when some extreme situation happens, I'll send data to the cloud. So cloud will not be loaded, okay, all the time. Okay, and hence comes the concept of edge. That means we are going to do computing at the edge nodes. Okay, edge nodes. Either the edge nodes can be sensors. It is also possible to have sensors to have computing capabilities. Okay, or we can deploy some additional called edge computing gateways, which are significantly complex enough than these end nodes, but significantly less complex than your cloud server. So idea is all the data collected to the edge gateways. Okay, there everything processing happens. And only when required, or when long-term data analytics or long-term data storage need to be done, then that data can be sent from these edge gateways to the cloud server. Okay, so that is one interesting thing here. Even so I'm going to show a couple of things to you guys. Okay, so you may say, what are these edge computing modules? Okay, what are these edge computing gateways? So one of them that you already know about is something called Raspberry Pi. You can see, okay, this is a very significant, even though people use this as a sensor, but I'll say this is a very complex enough thing and costly enough thing to use as a sensor. Okay, so I won't suggest this to be as a sensor, but it can act as a local, edge gateway or edge server where data can be collected, processed. Okay, this is a very good example. But in some case, what you may say, okay, this may not have enough computing capability. For example, if I am using cameras, okay, in the IoT devices, and which are actually taking certain pictures, and you have to do some kind of image analysis, then this is not enough. Okay, In that case, okay, I'm sorry. In that case, I actually end up using something called this. So these are, NVIDIA official modules. These are called NVIDIA Jetson board. So it is, let's say, I'll say 90% Raspberry Pi. It has like a microprocessor. You can install Ubuntu and everything. But the interesting thing is that what you can see here, the black portion is the heatsink. Below that, there's something called a graphic processing unit. So think about it. This is a computer with a small graphics card. Okay, very small, but it is still it is possible to do some kind of machine learning and deep learning in this module, and it consumes just 10 watts. Think about this. You can put this inside a truck. This can take, and add a camera. It can take pictures. Do all kind of image processing only here, and when only it detects some kind of anomaly, some kind of unique thing, then it can forward it to the cloud server. So that is a very good example, and you guys can actually look into this. Okay, so and this is the smallest one. This is the smallest, I'll say, the Jetson Nano. There are various other high configuration Jetson modules are available. Okay, based on the use case, you can refer to that. Okay. So the question comes, okay, what now? Here, what most students get confused about when we say edge nodes, we are talking about edge computing. That means we are doing some kind of processing on the edge nodes. That means here in this network, edge nodes are the IoT devices, but you are doing some kind of computation on some other devices like Raspberry Pi, Jetson here, not here. So let me be very precise. It is edge nodes doesn't necessarily mean that the nodes are at the end. I'll say these are near to the end. Okay. So for example, I can have Raspberry Pi or Jetson Nano. Okay. That can have an edge node to which sensors are connected. I can have even some sensors. For example, this is a very good sensor that I have that has Arduino hardware. It has a camera here. It has a screen here. You can connect other devices here. And it is capable of doing capable of running basic artificial intelligence algorithm. For example, if I put it in front of my face, it can detect my face there. Then and there's no other connectivity required. These are very good sensors. So even though these are the end devices, these can act as edge modules. Okay. So yes, it is desirable. It is possible to make end devices complex enough to be called as edge nodes. But if it is not possible, we can add another layer of devices such as Jetson and Raspberry. Those can act as edge nodes. Okay. Okay. So I think I'm going to, okay, instead of going through all this, in just 1 minute, I want to say something. Okay. So what I'm seeing is that even when I started researching IoT, there's a lot of, you can see a lot of books are there, a lot of online lectures are there. And everywhere they are all saying about some complex stuff, some theoretical things, something related to cloud computing. Nothing wrong. They covered actually all the bases, and they are very good lectures, very good books. But in the end, after reading all those books, I do not find someone having a clear understanding that what an IoT system should comprise of. As simple as if I say something like I am just measuring temperature at different location in IIT, then is that enough to call as an IoT system? What should it include? Okay, and what you guys should look into when you develop an IoT system. Okay, so I'm going to skip all those things. I'm going to just go to the final slide. Okay. So IoT consists of many things. First of all, you have to look into hardware. Okay, so there should be one, microcontroller which should be capable of doing everything. So it will run a small program that will collect all the data. If requires some kind of authentication, it can do it, provide connectivity to the network. Then you can have some kind of sensors and actuators, for example, some push buttons, some LED modules, some temperature sensor data. Okay, then these need to be available. Then all the data that is collected need to be available to some management console, so it can be looked into quickly, and it can be, and we can analyze. For example, okay, temperature of last 10 days is following. Maybe these 4 devices always report lower temperature than expected. This particular device does not send any information. Probably it is damaged or something like that. Some kind of central console is required. Okay, so data hardware is required. You can connect different hardware to make a hardware prototype. You connect this hardware to some kind of network through Wi-Fi or through Zigbee or some other way. Then the data collected will be sent to some application where you can monitor it, track it. Okay, and then this need to be stored in some kind of database. As simple as that, you can store it in some Google Sheet. Okay, and after that, you have to do some kind of data analytics. You must be doing some kind of, you must be, producing some kind of inference. For example, if I say that boiler temperature always rises in a sequence, let's say it is following some sine wave. But if suddenly, after looking at 100 days of data, I find out that suddenly it is not following the sine wave pattern, then there might be something problem with the, let's say, some kind of boiler or something. Temperature is not what is expected. Something bad may happen. Some kind of data analytics, some kind of machine learning is required. Okay. So yes, I know most of them, when we say IoT design, most of the people just connect two devices and turn light on and off, or just get some kind of temperature data displayed on some screen. That is good enough for an IoT project. But when you say I want to make an IoT system, it consists of a unique hardware, unique connectivity, data collection, data processing, analytics. So all these components, in my opinion, again, I'll say in my opinion, which I'll say this is what minimum thing that should happen. This is what an IoT system should look like. You have entire end-to-end thing. You know about the hardware, you know about the data, you know about what things can be done, what bad things can happen, and how to manage it. Okay, so this is what I expect from students, or even I expect from my colleagues, that okay, this is how an IoT research should proceed. This particular project you can implement by using a simple temperature sensor, keep monitoring the temperature for multiple days, and then try to do some kind of exceptional thing, try to burn a fire nearby so the temperature increases significantly, and then you will get some kind of notification. Okay, this is what that is expected. At least this is what is expected from a simple IoT system. The real world industrial IoT systems are much more complex. Okay. So this is all I wanted to talk about, in this presentation. Okay, and now I'm going to take some questions so I can finish this session within time. So if you guys have any questions, you can ask.
Okay, sir. Now one question is from sir. One question is from someone, I didn't recall name, Mallikarjun Gowda. How LPWAN can extend range of communication with low power?
Please excuse me for a minute. Actually, there's a call keep coming, so I'll just ask them to call back after a while. Okay, just give me a second, please. Yes. Yes. Can you please repeat the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The question is how can extend range of communication with low power?
How the first word I missed out. I think there's a disturbance. How LPWAN
can extend range of communication with low power?
Okay. The primary reason, the primary way of doing that is using a low frequency spectrum. So you can see I have shown that it can work in 433 megahertz range as well as in 868 megahertz range. So these are significantly smaller frequency range of a spectrum. Okay, so the frequency, as you can see, it is not in gigahertz. Like for example, in Wi-Fi you have 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz. Even for LTE, we are looking into sub 6 gigahertz range. But the idea is lower. Very simple idea about the wireless communication. Lower the frequency, higher will be the range. Okay, that is why your TV signals in the earlier days, TV signals propagate for a very, very long distance because they work in an extremely low frequency range. So that is why the transmission is significantly higher. So that is the primary reason you get very high range. Also, because these are of low frequency, maybe some kind of adjustment in the hardware will be required, but still they are still significantly energy efficient. They do not consume significant much energy, but because of use of this low frequency spectrum, the range is very high.
Yes, sir. From Meenal Patel, how to implement edge and fog for IoT devices? If you want to, along with this, she want to ask, if you want to offload data, how to make possible through edge or fog?
Okay, I think these are available in comments also. Actually, I missed that. Okay, so how to implement edge and fog for IoT devices? Okay, again, now it depends on application, where you want to look into, what you want to do as fog. Okay, so let's say simplest device, Node MCU or Arduino Uno. So what you want to do is like you want to do some kind of computation, okay, at the edge. So let's say very simple application. I have I'm keeping track of temperature, and Arduino usually have that much enough, stable memory that you can store at least 4 or 5 days of equivalent data in them. Okay, so there, just by not adding anything extra, there you can keep on saving data. Once in every 2 days, you can just take that data, do some kind of analytics, and then you just say, okay, there's nothing bad happens. I'm not going to send anything anywhere. If there's something exceptional condition happens, then I'm going to send data through internet to the cloud. So this is also a very simple example of edge computing, where I do not use additional edge devices, but the extra processing is required from the device side. Okay. Second thing that I'll suggest is for real world edge applications, as I've shown you guys this Raspberry Pi and NVIDIA Jetson board, they have the internal graphic computing capabilities. Okay. So for example, one of the very good applications that you will find on NVIDIA website is detecting potholes on the roads. Okay. You can have a camera here, put it in each and every bus or car. They will keep on taking pictures of the road. They detect, okay, and then those pictures will be processed here. They will not be sent to cloud. If the road is flat based on image processing, nothing will happen. If there are some kind of potholes, and again, those pictures need not to be sent to the central cloud. It can detect the size of potholes. At the same time, it can detect from GPS signal that, yeah, this is the location of pothole. And just using a simple text message that the size of pothole of 3 centimeters is there in this coordinate location. Now think about this, the amount of data that is being sent to the cloud server. It's significantly less. So yes, you need to buy some kind of edge modules. Okay, even Google recently started selling some kind of edge. You need to buy some kind of edge modules in order to do some kind of edge computing for IoT. Okay. Second, if you want to offload data, how to make possible through edge and cloud. See, offloading data is simple. As I said, network. If you have Wi-Fi connectivity, like in IIT, everywhere I have Wi-Fi connectivity, this is more than enough. It has integrated Wi-Fi chip. Okay. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, this one doesn't have, but some modules do have. Okay. But if you don't have, then you use cellular network. If you don't have that, then you can use LoRa technology. Okay. So any of the wireless technology. Offloading is simply providing connectivity and sending data. But if this good thing is edge computing, then you don't have to offload that much data compared to your traditional IoT system. Okay. Okay. After that, I'm going to read the comments only, so I can directly answer the question. So, are there any simulator emulator for low-powered wide area network? So, I'll say there are few, but they are quite proprietary as of now. Okay. I end up using NS2 and NS3, which provide the seed. The only thing is that you have to change the network properties. You have to change the spectrum. You have to change certain protocols, and that will work. Even in some cases where I don't have to deal with networking rather than the optimization, I simply use Java. I simply use C++ to make simple program, because sometimes if I only want to for example, calculate which device needs to be connected to which access point, there's no need for me to look into the physical layer. Then why I spend extra time on that? Okay. So my suggestion is actually look into this. I'll say at least in NS3 it is possible. Okay. But there are a few more proprietaries that you might have to purchase to make it work. Okay. Okay. My question: we can secret handshake scheme in Edge, Fog, or IoT device. I'll say, see, when you talk about network security, that is the secret. Okay. So the secret handshaking is already, you will say secret connectivity is already happening from my mobile device to my Wi-Fi access point. That is done by using, like public key, private key, cryptography. But again, remember, IoT devices, even these edge devices, doesn't have significant, processing capability. So you have to understand that the traditional security protocols that you are using for authentication and authorization will not directly work here. It will not process data on time. Okay, it may not be able to process the data at all. Okay, so the idea is you have to come up with lightweight security, authentication, and authorization protocols. Okay, and that is one very good, interesting topic. I do not work in the security domain, that's why I haven't covered this at all. Okay, but the idea is, yes, another very interesting research topic is how to provide secure communication, but with least complexity. Okay, so algorithm should be complex enough not to avoid, eavesdroppers or someone else to steal the data, but it should also be, significantly less complex, so not enough energy is consumed just for, encryption and decryption. Okay. Okay. I think that are all the questions that I have in chat. If any of you guys have more questions, then I can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now we have taken all the questions. So thank you, sir, for your such a nice lecture, and it was a very informative session for the participants. You have covered all the basic state-of-art IoT structures and its application in current scenarios. We are getting very good responses. People are appreciating that they have got so much knowledge. So thanks for sharing your knowledge, sir.
Thank you very much.
We will share a certificate of appreciation to you on your mail, sir. On your mail, I will share the certificate of appreciation. It is received at my end, but since I was busy in doing something to creating some new systems, so I will send it to your mail, sir. So thank you, sir. And now you can leave, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, dear participants, next lecture, it is 12:09. So next lecture will be, next session will be started at 12:15. So just 15 minutes late, as it has been extended to 10 minutes. So you can take 5-minute break. Just I am sending the link. You can join it immediately, but it will start at 12:15. And now you can leave this session. Those who have not filled the attendance, please fill it.